Everyone. Um, so Seem, are you good to have the start the discussion today?
Yeah, hi Joe. Uh, I am like already in discussion, but I have not actually concluded it. But still, I can share the points that I shared with you in the email. That what points I think that we should go forward with OPI.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
It's all right.
Yeah. I think
So
I think it would be valuable for people to hear that. Yeah, I mean, start the discussion at the TSC level. Sorry, I was 100% clear.
yes, no problem.
Okay.
So shall I start?
Yeah, first, I want to bring up a quick topic. Uh, why are we recording these meetings again? Somebody remind me why we're recording? Because do we have, so Sridhar, do you know how many people watch these things after the fact?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, and I mean, my impression is approximately zero. So
Yeah.
it's in the ones. And so why are we recording them and going to all that trouble? And
Um, I don't know, maybe for those who miss it and they want to come back and see the recording, the minutes are not in detail. They want to look at the recordings. I think that's how initially when some people expressed their opinions, that this was the one of the opinion that was mainly considered and decided to record. Of course, we don't have to record. If we can decide not to record, we can skip that. But the in the initial days, this was the opinion that was considered.
I would. I wasn't involved in the original discussion about the recording of the meetings, but I would suggest it would be more valuable to take slightly more detailed minutes and drop the recordings entirely.
yeah, I think that's true. Um, is there someone who's willing to volunteer, we can draft to take more detailed minute? Because I've found that uh, I am not able to take minutes and pay attention and run the meeting, and guide, help guide the discussion and at the same time. We can do
I'm
live,
I'm happy to assist. In, I usually attend this meeting these days. I'm happy to assist.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. You do it two ways. One, uh, you can have access to this for edit and take them that way, or you can take them however you like, and we paste them in afterwards, which is maybe the better thing to do. That
Okay,
way,
sure.
take
I
them.
will take some notes. I will share them with you after the meeting, and
Yeah.
we can see if that works.
All right. Let's see if that works. Okay. Um. All right. Any other agenda topic? So Asim's going to talk about basically OPI code structure and bridge slash vendor library integration and maintenance.
Joe, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, sorry, something was wrong on my side. So I think there is value in recording. One is if people miss, we could watch sometimes, and because the mornings are becoming so difficult with so many of these consortium meetings are in the morning, right? So if the concern is we're unnecessarily creating a lot of storage, then we can delete them after a month so that the people who missed.
Yeah, that's not my concern. Um, it's fine. We'll do both. So Simon will begin taking more detailed notes that we'll pass in, and we'll just fine. We'll just retain the recording.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I'll, I'll
also,
I'll
yeah.
I'll think about this topic again.
Yeah, and also, right, sometimes, it's very difficult to take good notes while it's happening. At least I find it difficult. Somebody else may find it easy, but that way, sometimes if we miss something, we can go back to the detailed discussion and improve the notes. So recording has value. If we don't want to post everywhere, or if we don't want to keep them for long, that's a fair point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's partly the public posting that doesn't seem to have much value. But fair enough. Okay. Anybody else have any other agenda topics? We'll leave it the way it is for now, except Simon, if you take some more detailed notes, then we can post them. All right. Any other agenda topics that anyone wants to bring up? I have one question. Laud, have you made? Simon got a thumbs up. Excellent. Laud, have you made any progress on bringing in the OPI overall strategy stuff you were talking about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago? You were going to go off and do some investigations and put together a set of thoughts or even a proposal for that. Have you made any progress on that?
We're working on it with Red Hat. As I said, it's not just us alone. It's dependent on the Red Hat mindset. So we're working on it offline with Red Hat.
Okay, fair enough. Still, okay. So the answer is we've made progress, still working on it. Are you ready next week or the
No,
following?
I don't think so. I need 3-4 more weeks.
3 or 4 more weeks to nail it down. Okay, that's fair. I just wanted get expectations. All right, thanks. All right, any other topics? All right, Asim, please, and if you want to share, you can, or you can just talk. Please walk us through all the things you were thinking, and because I think it's worth people hearing those ideas and that perspective, and your basically your thoughts and proposal in this area. And I won't tease it any more than that.
All right, so I'll just speak. So there were 3 things that we were discussing offline. First was for the software maintenance. We'll discuss that as well. For the software maintenance, actually, our thought is that the vendor companies, actually the DPO vendors, those should actually try and maintain their own Git repositories. So, and other OPI members as well. So rather hiring some third party for this software maintenance, it actually somewhat actually breaks the notion of having this discussion that the companies should actually invest their own resources in OPI so that they feel the value of it and actually want to see progress quite like quickly at the OPI, because currently you see that it's quite going at a very slow pace. So when companies actually putting their own resources in that software maintenance part, so that will certainly help OPI actually pick up a bit of speed. Second thing was that regarding the vendor bridges, it is suggested that the DPU vendors should actually take care of their own bridges, and because they understand their own bridges themselves the best, so this should be the vendor's responsibility, DPU vendor's responsibility to maintain the compatibility with the OPI. And I have, Elad, I've actually written an email to you. I think if we get some chance to talk on that, so it will help us elaborate more on this front. And the third point was that the quick start guides that we are talking about, those again should be maintained by the DPU vendors themselves. So the idea of having this themselves is because they better understand and they can give their customers better visibility on their websites, that where their quick start guides are located. And if some vendor has some client who is actually asking for some help, so they should actually first point them towards OPI to actually go and try that out. And then actually they should be like offering them some internal support. So all 3 these points, these are actually put in place to speed up the development that's ongoing in OPI. And all 3 of these are actually to get all the DPU vendors and other OPI members to actually move their resources. So like currently you see that we are struggling to have maintainers and we have so many open PRs actually pending. So to get around that thing, the more resources the companies are actually putting in, so the more they would actually want to see the progress at OPI. So that's the bottom line of all these three proposals. So we can like discuss one by one if you have any comment on that. For the software maintenance, Sirdar actually already contacted a third party. But my point again is that offloading the software maintenance to third party will just add another more like layer that will add more delay to this OPI, what we are trying to achieve over here. So the OPI members, when they actually pool in their own resources, they would actually want to have better control and actually have to have better pace at the OPI. So we can start with this topic and then we'll move on to the quick start guide and the bridge.
Yeah, I think I agree, right? Because if we are not put, there is a commitment by us, right? If when we do the work or when we commit to or when we own up our own side of the bargain, I think then there is little more motivation to do that. I am still fine if we are doing some common tooling that is required, glue sometimes that we need to put together. If we go external, but if the whole OPI is like, given to an external vendor to do it, that doesn't seem like the spirit of why we have to do something like OPI.
Yes, thank you. Dan?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I think that at least Intel is already doing these three things. And I 100% agree that all IPU DPU vendors should be doing the same thing. Supporting their customers on the code bases that they can find in OPI. We have a maintainer in OPI maintaining the work that we're doing. But I still see value in having a third party company maintaining the common pieces, right? Like all the CI, all of the flow that we benefit from in our development. It's still really valuable to have that be maintained, because that would mean that we would have to sort of find a way for a vendor resource, or maybe someone who isn't a vendor. We have to find a very specific company to go and maintain the shared stuff that is not device specific, and that's sort of a burden on a particular company or person. So I like how we're all working in the open source. We all have the same set of GitHubs and things like that, and I think we should retain that. And so I really think we need both. We really need everyone putting in the effort, doing it in a device agnostic way, right? Sharing the same APIs, the same CI, same flow, and then having OPI specific resources, helping us maintain, so that to defray the cost of making it common. So I think that part's really important.
All right. So actually there's two things, like you see that maintaining the common repo, that is still the goal, that we'll actually not be having like separate repos for every vendor in their own workspace or on their GitHub or somewhere in their own space. So we'll still have this common repository. But you see that the thing that is currently going on in the with the other PRs as well, that they are pending PRs that no one is actually even looking at. So if a certain compatibility with OPI's compatibility with certain software actually breaks, so the third party vendor will open a ticket and they will not be actually able to debug or actually help us out that how to fix that issue. And that that actually a reported issue will keep on lingering on, that no one will be actually attending it. And I think that all the companies that are here at OPI, that we have our own like CI/CDs as well. So the point is that if we pull in our own resources, then we'll be more like concerned to make the progress in the right direction at a better pace.
I think that the vision that you lay out is optimistic and ideal, but I don't think it will happen in real life. Simply because the companies already stressed out and stretched out with their own agendas and their own work that needs to be done. And OPI is yet to prove to them internally that it's something that's going to be a multiplier for them.
Okay, so OPI is those companies. I mean, all the companies together are OPI. I mean, OPI isn't some other body with budget and staff and direction. That produces something that people either sign up for or not. I mean, that's kind of an important point you're bringing up a lot. So what is OPI? Okay.
Well, Joe, I mean, of course, in OPI there are people from each of these companies, but as I don't need to tell you this, every company is a much bigger beast
Of
that
course.
has its own agenda, its own priorities. The guys that we have at OPI are guys that have been assigned to help at OPI. If you're asking for more people to come in from that company, they will need to go back to their prospective companies and say, hey, we need more people. And what I'm saying is this is not going to happen in the short term.
Yeah, but I'm so yes, all true. Again, the point though is so we've had a chicken and egg problem for 18 months, and we still have one. And the chicken and egg problem is exactly as you articulated a lot. And Asim plus use, the combination of those viewpoints, plus actually what Dan added, say it well, which is if there's another value to doing something, companies are doing it. If there's not, if there's a future common value that can be achieved, by and large, it's not happening. And it's not happening because there isn't enough there to make it happen. But to make it happen, you need enough there. And enough is a flexible term that shifts over time. And so we have bits and pieces all over the place, but getting something unified has always been difficult that everyone's willing to sign up to and work towards a common goal. We see this in Lifecycle, we see this in API, we see this in the POCs. Those successful POCs have all been driven from a specific company or pair of companies' viewpoint, and I think that's not, none of that is surprising and none of that is a criticism. It's just how do we bridge this gap? So Steve and I had a long discussion about this on how to bridge the gap. And that's why I wanted all you guys to hear it is we know the problems. So Lod, you articulated them really well. We know the problems. In what way can we bridge that gap? Does anyone have a thought or opinion on that?
So allow me to give
you go ahead. You go ahead, and then we'll have Dan chime in.
So my 2 cents. There should be a separation between what the companies are doing internally on their respective stacks and what OPI brings on top of that to unify it, which means that any application vendor comes first through OPI and then it has an obstruction that helps him or her connect to the downstream. And the way to solve that is to bring more ISVs that are using OPI, more VNF vendors that are using OPI as their stack of choice, and then bring more clients, development partners or deployment partners that are interested in having a multi-vendor ecosystem and are insisting on it. And that will basically bring all the companies to do that, because if you have a client insisting on it, somebody who's actually planning to deploy something insisting on it, then there's much bigger demand.
Fair enough. Asim and then Dan.
Yes,
your
Dan.
thoughts on back and forth, and then Dan.
All right. So, Elan, you see that the third point that about the quick start guides and maintaining the own software bridge. Actually, the point is that the DPU vendors should actually like more publicize this OPI work that they are doing. So rather waiting for the customer to come, unless the DPU vendors themselves point the customers to the OPI. So I don't think that we'll have much customers coming in, because already we have seen the pace that currently we are working on. So we have not put anything on the table for the customers to come and see and pick and choose that, okay, so should I go for their DPU vendor support or should I go to OPI for this certain functionality? So for the quick start guides as well, the DPU vendors should actually have more visibility of OPI on their websites, and they should be maintaining their own quick start guides, because they know that how OPI can plug in with their SDKs. So it will actually help bring in more customers naturally towards OPI.
My raised hand was
Yeah.
crusty. Sorry about that. So I actually am aligned with everything that was just said. So I think we have to do it all. Sadly, I love the point about bringing in ISVs and customers and clients to drive this. That's where folks like Microsoft have been really successful with things like Sonic. So yeah, we need to be building this community. We have to figure out how. And I do think that the paying someone to help us maintain the baseline stuff is super valuable. But yeah, it cannot replace the vendors who are working on their vendor specific stuff. Have to make sure that that's in the open source and accessible to OPI.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
I agree.
please.
Right. Sorry. So both. I mean, it's a combination of both. There are things that only a DPU vendor can do, others cannot do. Right. Even if it is really building an abstraction layer on top that unifies. There are some things that are extremely difficult from outside in. Right. And then at the same time, bringing uniformity and common tooling, and I think that's the part that OPI as a group, volunteers plus whoever else that we bring on can help.
Yes, sorry. So I was just about to say that you see that different like the DPU vendors like us out there, we have our own like SDKs, we have our own like special accelerators, and we have our own like special interfaces towards our devices. So that's one thing that OPI should also see, that all DPU vendors, you can actually have them on the application layer to work with the same API. But still we have to keep some window open for the DPU vendors to actually make this special configuration that they are doing, or actually maintaining the bond between the device and the device driver running on the host. So there has to be this channel that the DPU vendor should be allowed to keep, that okay, so we'll support this standard application interface, but we'll also allow this like sort of maybe encrypted configuration channel from the host to the DPU, so that they can actually also perform other configurations that are actually needed, or that are actually designed to be required by the accelerators that are running on their DPUs.
I just want to correct you there. There is no specific host to DPU IPU connection that we're specifying. It's always a zero trust type of thing. So yeah, it is encrypted, but it could come from anywhere, right? So it doesn't have to be from the host. So we want to avoid, pairing the device with the host, because we don't trust it. But yeah, in general, yes, there's a connection there, and that's why we define all these APIs and run them over TLS and whatnot to make sure that you're authenticated.
Yes. Okay. So you see that there's like all DPUs do not actually like operate in the same way. So there are certain DPUs that are actually in some ways tied to the host for some of their configurations. So that is the thing that we have to open up ourselves on that front as well, so that the DPU vendors can actually have some configuration offloaded remotely to the DPU through their own secure channel or something like that. So
Yeah, as long as as long as there is conformance to OPI on one side, conformance may be a big word at this point of time, and um, and there'll always be something else, right? In terms of making sure the DPU works the way you want it to work, there will be side channels. Is it from the host or somewhere else? Is up to internal design. Maybe that's what Dan is saying.
Yeah, we should be striving for no side channels. Side channels just sound bad, but yeah, sorry, that's on the side. Sorry, jump into our architecture mode here, but yeah, I apologize. So, but continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for somebody else that could be main channel. It could be on the same host. For somebody else, like you said, could be a centralized controller. It could be anywhere in the cluster. So that if we have some common architecture, yes, that should work. But along with it, there could be base configurations. There could be lifecycle management where there may be additional things that are needed to each of them. I know we're speculating and hand waving at a very high level, but yeah, you can't say no to what Asim is saying. You could have your own way of implementing. That freedom is there with DPU vendors, right? And they'll be driven by their majority commercial use cases, and OPI will have to come at this point as a second step.
I agree with Venkat on this. I think that it really depends on the deployment model. Very, very early in the days of OPI, we said that the two options, either DPUs are a server inside a server and need to be treated as such, to Dan's point, or they're a component inside a server that has capabilities. And that's the other way of thinking about it. And again, both of them need to be supported.
Yeah, I was just more talking about vendor specific side channels. It's problematic, but yeah, I totally agree. Sorry for the sidetrack.
No, it is. If you are pointing to like two heads, that's a nightmare for anyone. I hope people are not designing, but if they have some fix it, yeah, maybe we are digressing, but yeah, I agree. Two heads, we can barely survive with one, and imagine two of them. Yeah.
So I think yes, Elad put it the right way. So anything on that topic?
No, it's a good discussion. I mean, I fully understand all of the points being made, and I think the instruction is to go back and think about the points Asim raised. We've had versions of this discussion previously, and we'll consider this we'll also consider all these points when we try to put together a proposal for the comprehensive OPI strategy. And we'll try to work in the points raised on all sides. So, I mean, Laud makes some great points. Dan makes good points. Asim's requests are not unreasonable. There are interesting trade-offs in doing that. Venkat raises good points as well. We'll take this into account when we put together a proposal for how we might actually move forward. And again, that will need basically review and argument. And I hope we get actual argument about it back and forth, and then can come to something that's both has some value and is achievable. Because I can say a lot of things in OPI I did originally, 2 years ago on why there might be an enormous amount of value. And the problem is, to get the enormous amount of value, you need a fairly large amount of upfront work, and that's has been difficult for a bunch of valid practical reasons. I mean, I face them, and all you guys face them too. So we need a variant of that original position of OPI that actually gets us somewhere, and we'll try. I mean, these discussions are all great.
Yeah, and about the software, the bridges we have with the vendor SDKs in the OPI, the DPU vendors should actually maintain those bridges towards the OPI with the APIs that are being defined in the API group.
Yeah. Good point. All right. Anyone else on this topic or any others? Anyone at all?
If I may add something, Joe,
Please.
I think that I would like to clarify the way I view it, and again, my 2 cents here. Well, when I look at it today, I think that when we start the work with ways to let again VNFs and ISVs have access to one piece of code, or I should say one set of libraries that allows them to work towards implementing their code on DPUs, IPUs. What the vendors need to do is to make sure that there's a connection between that layer and their layer. That's their responsibility. That's how they support OPI in my mind, by making sure that they have this layer well defined on their side. So whatever the case may be, whether it's IPDK or Docker, whatever the case may be, they can connect to the OPI layer and make sure that the workloads and the APIs are translated through correctly. And I think that if we do it that way, every vendor will be saying to their clients, look, if you want to have a multi-vendor or vendor agnostic environment, here's how you do it, because we've certified our software with OPI, and OPI does this automatically for you. And then when a client comes in, or when a deployment partner comes in, they would demand it as something that has to be included in the solution. No matter if they start with one vendor, they will demand it so the other vendors are also in. And that will help us both as a community, and it will help the deployments. So that's the way I view it. And to Osman's point, if we have a third party that maintains that piece of code, that layer, I think it makes sense. But that third party has to be DPU, IPU savvy, meaning it cannot be somebody that does software services that doesn't know the hardware. And that's why I suggested CodeLime or somebody like them that has hands-on experience with FPGAs, ARM processors, DPUs, IPUs, because they can make sure that when an ISV comes in, they understand the language of what engines are below the hood and what to expect and how to maintain it. And they also probably already work with some of the vendors. So they have access to asking technical people questions. So that's why I'm sort of hinting that I'm actually much more for bringing somebody that is let's say an outsider that can speak to all of these and doesn't have an affiliation.
Yeah, Elad, I agree. Again, the point will be that what will be the priority assigned to those like integration issues that will be raised by that third party. That will still remain open for times and times, and like currently we are struggling with our PRs. That's the point.
I think well, I agree to your point, but I think the answer is prioritization and focus. Meaning we only focus on one use case every time and only work on that use case and not spread it around. And when we do it, we need to do it end to end, meaning let's just assume that we decide that F5 is the use case. We need to make sure that we do it end to end, which means all the provisioning and telemetry, all the access to engines, all the security engines that they need. All of that is done again like a Ford moving belt, meaning everybody is focused on that task and that task only. If we start spreading ourselves too thin, like one group is doing this and then there's another PR doing something else, it won't end.
So in your thinking, Elad, what would that look like if we focused on this single use case? What would the output look like?
The output would be, again, let's just take the F5 example. The output would be a workload from F5 that works seamlessly with an OPI layer that then translates under the hood to each one of the IPU, DPU vendors. And then you go out and you show, hey, Nginx, again, just give an example, Nginx now works with all the DPUs, IPUs, because OPI made sure that this works end-to-end, meaning that once you load Nginx and you have that built-in layer of OPI, all the vendors know how to work with it and all the vendors optimize for it. That's how you show value to clients. You show them that there was actually a workload that went through this process. And then what you say to them.
But sorry, Joe, but I'm hearing a bigger story here, Elad, where it's like there's an automation orchestration workflow that allows the provisioning and the deployment of the Nginx workload on multiple vendors' cards and then shows operation of that. Is that what you're proposing?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, end to end. And again, it's not that far-fetched from what we already have because we've already done so much work on multiple facets of this. We just need to time down to one use case and then bring it out and show it.
You had something to say, Joe?
I do, but I was going to let the current thread finish. Go ahead and finish.
Yeah, I think my last comment then is we need to bring this, I guess, to the POC group as, hey, can we build this as a POC and actually write the scope of it to be what you're saying, Vlad? Because I don't think they have a scope of an effort like you're talking about. It's a little broader than what they've approached so far. I agree the pieces are there, but we haven't proposed tying them all together as a single POC/demo that can then be made available for anyone to come look at.
Again, the way I'm thinking about it is I'm thinking about OPI as a company, right?
Yes.
And I'm thinking that you have to bring out a product of sorts. I understand it won't be a full product with support, but you have to bring a product out of sorts as a POC that you can demo to clients. And then one client will say, yeah, I like Nginx, but I prefer, I don't know, something else. And then he will say, if you do this for me, I'm willing to buy. And that will start the whole cycle internally for us of both bigger commitments from DPU vendors, IPU vendors, and everything.
Yeah, ideally they look at Nginx, which is nice because an open source example, and they can imagine replacing it with their own workload, right? But keeping
their
the
own
overall
workload or a different F5 workload or a Palo Alto workload, but
Yes.
it will generate the demand and it will generate demand to multiple directions because they will go back to Palo Alto again, just an example, and say, how come are you guys not supporting OPI? We get multi-vendor access when we use OPI, so why aren't you supporting that? And that will bring them to the table. Again, every single step that we can do to create traction on both ends is welcomed. And I'm saying the only way to do that is to focus on one, finish it end to end, and show it.
Okay, I agree, Elad. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with Tim, you as well, that we can actually take it to the POC, or maybe we can take it to the lab to set it up, try to set it up if we have like all the pieces in place. But yes, that's, I think, the one way to do it, that let's learn, just put up some use cases that we can actually focus on and put the pieces together for, like, start putting pieces for those use cases together.
Yeah, I think when I say POC, I'm inclusive of the lab. That work group has sort of taken over the lab, so and that's as it should be.
All right, thank you. So over to you, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, this all sounds good actually. The only sticking point here, I'm always the what could go wrong on these discussions. Just um, that interface. So again, it seems started this conversation with how do we deal with the interface to each of the DPUs to make the idea that a log laid out real. And you have to deal with the multiple vendors. Now, one answer is you can say, oh, well, if we do everything down to some API layer, the vendor can say, here's my bridge code, and that's exactly what it's to do that, and that's exactly what a scene is asking, in my opinion. So, or you can say you'll have another layer that's not involving the vendor directly, where you go, okay, I have a vendor SDK time 4 or 5, and here's how and we'll make the calls, and we move it up a layer for the calls you need underneath. And we only worry about, and we use that then as an example of how you do the same thing across multiple vendors without having sort of this common bridge library that's maintained by the vendors to match to all the things OPI needs. And maybe I'm not making that completely clear, but it's not a question of bridging to all the vendors. It's a question of where you put the line on who does what, I think. Does that make sense, or am I off base? Again, Asim, you've been driving at this, so.
Yes, again, you see that we can pick some use case, like Alad is saying that we can actually use some use case. But yes, that will again, I think, come down to this initial discussion that we were having, that the TPU vendors will actually have to take some of this initial burden, I would say, that to maintain and actually make their SDKs compatible, or have that bridges maintained that make the OPI API compatible with their SDKs. Because nobody actually understands better the SDK. Like Dan was also saying that nobody actually understands the SDK better than the DPU vendors themselves.
So that, I think that's, again, I like where this is going on the specific use case. Again, we've had versions of this that just haven't gone far enough so far. We've had, several examples that just haven't gone far enough. And we could take those examples. Nginx is a good choice, possibly, or the EVP and bridge is another good choice. We could take those examples and try it and see where we hit the problem, and then maybe that's the thing to do, is just try it. That speculating doesn't do us any good.
Yeah, I feel like, Joe, you're definitely poking on a weak spot. But I think what Alad is proposing is, let's not just, get hung up on these individual weak spots. Let's also show the entire framework in action. Yes, there will be holes. Yes, there will be problems, but we want to show the DPU customer where we're going and that this whole thing can work, right? And it's multi-vendor, and that's where we're driving towards. And once we get this sort of framework working with an app, like say Nginx, and we try a second workload, it's going to uncover more and more of these holes you're talking about. And we're going to have to work in those areas. But it's so much easier for them to appreciate what we're doing and get excited about it if they can see the whole thing as an end-to-end use case that's generally applicable, even though we did a particular thing like Nginx.
Yeah, that's very fair.
So it's not trying to solve those problems you brought up. They're there. But it is trying to say, let's stitch all of our pieces together and try to show something that will get people excited.
And let me add one more thing. You said correctly that Microsoft was the reason why Sonic has been successful because they took the lead. We also have a company inside OPI that, in my mind, will benefit no matter what happens and should take the lead, and that's ARM. All of the pieces that I see are related to ARM in some way or fashion, and I think that the work that OPI is doing will really help ARM open its ecosystem and bring more into its ecosystem. So I would maybe suggest that we speak to ARM and see how are they seeing OPI and if they're willing to maybe help us a little bit more into making this, as I said, some sort of an ecosystem play for them that brings in ISVs on the one hand and brings in clients to see how this comes together on the other. What would you think about that one?
I'll go last. Other people? And if not, then yeah. Good thought. Can't hurt to ask.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, to build any of these things, we need companies to contribute engineers, right? So trying to scare up an engineer or two, from several of us and put it together as a team, and we get the scope right a lot, maybe we can build an interesting POC that shows the end-to-end possibilities.
So, Joe, I think we can like move in this direction as well. Let's see that. Okay, let's take one use case and let's start actually putting the pieces together. And in that phase, we'll see that where we actually struggle to get the pieces to work together.
Yeah,
This
excellent.
can be a good starting point.
Excellent. Do you want to type up the discussion-based modification of your write-up? So the discussion we had and then this discussion, and let's stick that in the GitHub as a proposal.
All right, I can do that.
Yeah, because again, you already have the start. Take this discussion and refine the position, and then we can get input for people to edit it, and then let's see if we can let's try to execute on it, or let's do better than try. Let's execute on it. I think it's a way forward. And again, we'll blend this into the stuff I believe we'll be able to bring in next Thursday on kind of taking all the strategy discussions we had over the last month and bring them together into one proposal. We'll incorporate this as well into that discussion, thinking, and proposal. So very good discussion, everyone. And part of my job is to play devil's advocate and so on. So I actually like the discussion quite a lot, and I thought it was had all the points brought up were good. So thank you.
Hey, I have a question. So what's the decision on the engaging with the third party vendors? Are we doing it or are we not doing it? Because that part was not clear. Because last week I had a discussion with that company, and they have scheduled another round this week, but they are not clear of the scope part, right?
Because we don't have a defined scope for them other than sort of the lab software maintenance. This project, we would have to, again, we need the write-up from a SEAM. We need the overall strategy stuff. Then we can say, here's specifically what we would want them to do. and then we have to take that into the board meeting.
Okay, so until all these things are finalized, I will not discuss with this vendor anymore. Thanks.
Well, again, do you have enough from the vendor that confident that if we had a actual proposal that everything would go well? And you don't have to answer that on the air, but if you need more discussion with them to build confidence and understand, so that when we make the proposal, we know what the trade-offs are on the third party vendor approach, then have those meetings. If you have enough, then don't have the meeting if you know enough already, because it's this involves contracts and funding and all that good stuff.
They can technically, they can definitely do. We have all confidence on that company, but they need a scope from us to make any proposal for us, right? Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's fair. So let's take that up next week.
Yeah.
And see if we can work out what the actual proposal scope would be for a third party.
Yeah. And just one more point, Joe. We have one more pass remaining. So to all the TSC members here in the call, if you want to attend One Summit, OPI project is sponsoring your passes. 4 passes are taken. One more is remaining. So please let me know if you want to attend this summit.
All right. And with that, we're done for the week. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. All right.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.